son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. Oh, yeah. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
All right, folks, we're back here again. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Today we have a, four-time return guest. One of the first guests on the show who has had a wild journey since the first time you were on here. Please welcome to the show. We have MRI scientist, assistant professor in the Department of Clinical Radiology at Vanderbilt, Dr. Michael Pridmore.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on again.
No, dude, this is super exciting. We've been talking about this for a minute, and you briefly touched on what you do in previous episodes, but I'm really excited to get into more nitty gritty.
Yeah, I'm kind of doing some different stuff now too. But it's all relative, same field, but a little different now. Yeah.
So why don't you, for those who haven't heard any of the previous episodes, why don't you just give us kind of the bullet points of what it is that you do, the quick synopsis of how you got into doing it, and then we can kind of break out into the more specific exploration.
Right. Yeah. So now, I over the last year I got promoted to assistant professor in radiology. I'm now the acting magnetic resonance safety expert on the main campus. And essentially I go around to all the MRIs and I make sure that they work right. It's just an easy way of putting testing and stuff like that.
Sure.
And I do it for all the scanners, Vanderbilt associated. I do some teaching as well in the Department of Medical Physics. So really I'm in the medical physics kind of section now. Before I was in research at the Imaging Institute, so it's kind of I've gone from research side to clinical side.
Sure.
But there's still some research opportunities and things I'm cooking up. But just as I'm in the first year of this, just kind of making sure I get my main job objectives done before kind of branching out to other things. Yeah.
It's a lot of responsibility, especially, I definitely want to hear more about what is the actual side of being an MRI tech. I'm sure it's a balance of not only understanding the physical equipment, but then maybe understanding a lot of the software that's used to run the machines.
Oh, sure. Yeah. The techs, they have a working knowledge of the scanners and everything, but sometimes it's handy to have someone who's not constantly scanning people day in and day out every hour to kind of be able to synthesize some information and, help them out with things. So one of the things I do help with is protocol development. So if a site wants a different type of scan that's newer, better, quicker, I can go in and help them with that and then advise the techs, here's how you run the next scan, things like that. So I'm kind of the MRI guy out of my medical physics team. There's nuclear physicists. Every medical device is covered under our 5-person team, which includes X-rays, mammography, CT, PET, a bunch of other stuff I could list. But they really needed help with MRI, and I had just been doing a bunch of different types of research in MRI. So it kind of, I don't know, it was a good move, even though it was maybe a bit out of trajectory. I'm still in MRI world, and I kind of get to own it. So it's been really cool. And how I got there, you
kind of break down how it evolved to where you were oh, this is the thing for me for sure.
It's so when you get your PhD, it's typically 4 to 6 years. Spend a lot of time doing that, and kind of the path before you for a lot of people is to either say, well, academics was fun and just go into industry and sort of move on, so to say. Not really, but and then there's the other option to staying in academics, and usually that involves a postdoctorate position. So that's what I did for 4 years afterwards, and that kind of gives you some time to work work on projects that are similar to what you did during your PhD, but also kind of branch out and look at other things. And, I think we'll get into this a little later, but there's sort of the terminal job of a principal investigator, which is you write grants, you get funding, and that you're almost like a small business in that way, where you get like 5 years of I can still work and hire people, but you have to do it again. You have to do it again. You have to do it again. And, it really is like a realm of ideas. You have to be really good at ideas, and being current with medical research and where funding's going is another big part of it, kind of separate sometimes. But yeah, I had seen that. I had worked around that for years, and I felt like I could do it. But that's just not really what I get like interested in, and get like where I start to lose track of time. I'm so like, invested in learning about something. So I kind of found out through a colleague about this medical physics route. And, when I came in, I felt like completely underqualified. Like it's like all these people are physicists and I'm just a, scientist. Started in psychology too. So it's been like a curve that's getting steeper and steeper as I kind of found myself in this orbit. But yeah, really it was just opportunity and knowing people and having them around, long enough to where they were like, hey, is this something you're interested in? And it worked out probably for the best, because I can still do research if I want to, but I'm also doing things that actually impact people on like a daily basis, which is the hard part about doing research. There's no daily impact on it. It's like 4 years until that paper comes out and you're like, I did the thing. But it's been, I wouldn't say I like saw this on the horizon and was like, I'm going to be a medical physicist and like piloted my plane right there. But it's been a good kind of transition, and really medical physics is becoming kind of like more and more popular now and kind of growing as its own field. So it's cool to be at Vanderbilt, because it's one of the first CampEP approved medical physics programs. So some of the first medical physicists ever are like on my team, or like an email away. So it doesn't feel like some sort of abstract thing that we're working on. It's like, no, like the stuff actually is here and you can touch it. You can meet these people, It feels very, very tactile, I guess, as opposed to just some like broad areas of science that feel so, ambiguous at some point.
Yeah, it's got a real cool Manhattan Project vibe that I'm really loving. It's metal as hell.
They would love that joke.
Well, this is something I've gone into like a million times on a million shows, but there's so much technology that we just take for granted. And a lot of the cutting edge medical technology that we just take for granted is kind of hilarious. Like when you really break down what we have the capability of doing as opposed to 100 years ago, I don't know. We're just all so used to so many people have had a CAT scan. So many people have gone through an MRI. It's just like a thing that we assume has been around for a long time. And we don't really know any different, but that isn't the case. Right. It's still a new and developing thing. It's in the scope of medical science. It's still pretty new. And there's like so many different emerging ways that it gets used and has been used.
Constantly. And it's funny coming from research to clinical, because there's a lot more toys on the research side. And as I come to clinical, I'm like, oh, you guys just look at this. Oh, no big deal. I don't have to worry about, all this advanced stuff. But it is creeping over as well as it. There's obviously reasons why we don't want just like any sort of scan to be done on anybody, for like safety reasons, or also just for like proper diagnosis. But yeah, it has been very interesting to kind of catch the other side of the door over this past year, I'd say.
Now, you were saying you work with some like nuclear physicists. Is that because like at some level there's nuclear stuff involved in some of these tools?
Yeah, for
Like
PET
power
scans.
source?
Yeah, or so like positron emission tomography, PET. So usually that involves like an injection of a radio tracer, so a radioactive nuclide that's developed in a lab to, say, for example, like bind to a tumor site, so that when they scan you, it like has a very short half-life, but they inject you and then scan you right afterwards, and they can kind of more accurately detail where the tumor cells
What's
are,
going on.
as opposed to just kind of looking at anatomy, kind of like opening a text anatomy book and being like, there's the tumor. It's just, for PET especially, you can imagine it like a picture with like just what you see is tumor, so it's really good at visualizing that and localizing it as well for, say, surgery or things like that.
Dude, that's wild. That's really crazy that those kinds of few people are just on your team. Like the random scenarios that you'd run into a nuclear physicist I'm assuming is going to be slim to none. So the fact that you have them at ready disposal is sick.
Yeah, I've started using it as like a shorthand joke of like, just a nuclear physicist at my disposal. But really though, I'll say one of my team members in particular has a history in the military where they were on a nuclear submarine. So, is for them is something that they had studied, nuclear physics, and then sort of ended up here. But yeah, it's wild. They're, like I said, I'm the MRI guy, and I have a lot. I feel like, just with the whole amount of machines and things going on, but like fluoroscopy and all these other types of, where they're just shooting electrons at you, and it's like there is danger to it, but it's a risk benefit for your, a healthcare diagnosis type thing. But it is sort of crazy from especially the testing standpoint, like kind of what I hear about it and what I've seen. I also do some ultrasound too, but that's pretty boring, I would say, compared to like
that's probably like the most
tracers.
prosaic. Exactly, it's the most prosaic out of all of those.
Yeah, it's quite nice. It's easy.
Well, let's kind of get into specifically MRI stuff. What is an MRI? What is an MRI machine? How does it work? Why do we use it?
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we want to start with like a picture of an MRI. Just, I think everyone knows, or at least in movies, it's like a big donut that makes a lot of noise, and there's a table that you lay on that slinks you into the donut. Yeah, and here we have a nice cross section of it too. So yeah, this is perfect. Cool. So yeah, so what you see here, you got patient, the patient table, right? The scanner. I love it's just a scanner, just at the bottom. But yeah, so there's this radio frequency coil, these gradient coils, and then what they just call magnet. And I think those are the most mysterious parts about the MRI for people who don't work on them or know a lot about them. Don't have to know a lot about them,
Really? Why is that?
I think, unless you're in electrical engineering, you might not really know what a radio frequency coil is or what it could do. Same with gradient coils. But each of them, actually, it's perfect in this picture. There's three main magnets of an MRI, and those are them, essentially. The radio frequency coil, the gradient coils, and, magnet works, I'll say, in this example.
Sure.
But yeah, so there's a lot of magnets around the body. There's a lot of coils, which are conductive. So, like just Faraday's law of induction and Lenz's law, some physical things there kind of interact to get us a picture of the body. And I just skipped through like everything from the physical properties to the picture at the end. But kind of what's going on here is, so it's called magnetic resonance. So from like I'll audio engineer perspective, you think resonance. What do you think?
The shape of a cavity and the frequency that it would resonate.
Okay.
Vibrations.
Yeah. Or like a precession, a frequency,
Harmonic sequence. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that resonance is actually the big part of how we take pictures of the body. So maybe just bring up like a random picture of an MRI. Just type in MRI. That would work. Or just actually an image, not the machine. Just like,
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
just straight up. Just I'm sure the first thing we see in MRI is just going to be, yeah, cool. So any of those images, you can click them, just make them bigger. But that's a little old school. Yeah, do that one. Okay. So like what we're looking at here is a head, a brain scan. It's a coronal, named after the corona, like Jesus or Mary,
Right.
the corona, and a sagittal view on the right, which is that like where we actually see the brain, and sagittal named after Sagittarius.
Oh, interesting.
A little history there. Yeah, they love the Latin. But like to us, that looks like we're just slicing a human and looking inside of them. But really, what this picture is hydrogen atoms, right?
What?
So your traditional MRI, I'll say it like that because I've done some work in what's called multinuclear imaging, which is where we don't use hydrogen. I can circle back to that, but
Yeah, no, sure. We're definitely
yeah.
go into that.
Typically, your MRI images are just pictures of hydrogen. We have, your body is 70% water or whatever. We are mostly, it's most abundant in the body. And hydrogen itself, on the periodic table, it's the first one because it has one proton, one electron. And so trying to like throw all this out there at the same time. So an atom, the electron rotates around the proton, kind of like the Earth and the Moon for this example of hydrogen. Easy way to think of it.
Sure.
So the measure its rotational inertia is what's called an angular momentum, and the strength of the magnetism as it's spinning and precessing is called the magnetic dipole moment. I'll try to explain. I try not to go too hard with those words, but those are like the strict MRI terms. But essentially, there's a spin to all atoms, with how quickly the electron spins around the proton, and we can measure that for each element. In the case of MRI, we prefer, hydrogen because it's really abundant in the body, so we can make really good pictures with it. But also what's good about it is because it's just one electron, that means it has an odd number of spins. And so we're getting into something called spin-spin relaxation, and like classical quantum physics as well explains it. So
It also sounds like a really sick 80s song, Spin Spin
I know, right?
Relaxation.
Oh, I love that. There's an MRI band called the T2 All Stars. Pretty good.
That's incredible.
T2 star is a type of image contrast you can do just for
That is incredible.
to explain the joke. But yeah. So all electrons have spins. Essentially, what I'm trying to explain. In the case of hydrogen, it's most preferred for MRI. And so it actually, we can measure how quickly electrons spin around it, and we can essentially use magnets to create a magnetic field that's resonant to the spins of that electron or that nuclei.
That is crazy.
So in the case of hydrogen, it's 42.58 megahertz per Tesla. That's the the rotational kind of number that we go by. And MRIs are their strength, their magnet strength is denoted with Tesla, and it's spelled just like the car. It has nothing to do with Elon Musk, but typically
like legit Tesla.
Yeah, like a real Tesla. Yeah, not that other. Yeah, and so like your typical clinical MRI would be like a 1.5 Tesla. More and more, you're starting to see 3 Teslas come into clinics, heavily used in research. And then there are some 7 Teslas out there. And actually one of them, I think there's like, at one point there were like 10, and I'm sure there's a lot more now, and I don't keep up with these numbers, but at one point Vanderbilt had like one of the first few 7 Tesla MRIs for research purposes, and I've gotten scanned in it. It's a mother, man. It's crazy. Some
How
real,
big is that
like,
in comparison to like an average size one?
So the kind of hole in the donut is a little shorter or smaller in diameter, and it's a bit more elongated because essentially there's like more magnets going on is the layman's way. Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah, it's like a much bigger box. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, and yeah, not used clinically. I mean, well, there's a link that says clinical use of MRI, but as far as like FDA clearance and stuff, it's just now kind of coming to light. And this is just for human use. There's animal MRI scanners, which I don't know enough about, but they go up to like 15 Tesla. And
why would those need to be more intense?
So, in some cases, you could, like I've seen some research out there where people say breed mice with a certain, gene or something like that they want to localize, or like brain tumor treatments, stuff like that. And, I'm thinking of like kind of an extreme example, but they may like look at these rats' brains in these crazy big scanners, and you can scan cadavers for much, much longer than you could anything living.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like how pictures used to work back in the day, where people had to stand still for hours to like get a clear picture. And that's kind of what's going on with MRIs, is that we can get a cleaner and cleaner and cleaner picture, but it just takes time. And in the clinic, you're not really there to spend like an hour or 2 on a scan, much less most people aren't comfortable or have some other concerns. But
sure, yeah.
But for this stuff, they could scan a rat's brain for like 24 hours and get like, like up to micron level type stuff. There's been some pretty wild like brain mapping that's been done, I would say, with stuff like that, but very outside of the clinic, very research focused.
Yeah. Well, I imagine it'd be even more bespoke. And like how much where are they getting a power supply for this? Like, is this just from the grid, or do hospitals have their own like legitimate diesel generator power supply?
There's that's a good question. And actually I've learned a lot about sustainability in medical healthcare in this past year. I think more so than any other time ever, just because of the people I'm kind of around and what they're talking about. But yes, this is straight plugged up to the grid, and it takes a lot of electricity. Yeah, absolutely. Crazy. Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to find you a nice, beautiful picture of a rat brain that's been scanned for hours and hours.
Oh, sick! Yeah.
Oh man, it sent me to Facebook. Don't you hate that when you like find the best?
And you know that that
Google
image
search.
Yeah, they're not gonna. It's
like, oh, come on. But anyways, yeah. Yeah, so we went off about animal stuff for a bit, and I lost a little track.
Yeah. So we were talking about the different types of machines.
Oh,
1
yes, the
Tesla,
different,
3
like,
Tesla, 7
Tesla.
Teslas.
Yes. All right, I'm back to where I'm at. Yes. Yeah, talking about the Teslas, we went up to like all the way to 15. So the magnetic resonance, I was trying to stress that part. We use magnets to resonate at a frequency that gives us essentially a way to detect the signals from the nuclei that are emitted just through this process.
Wow.
It's so there's 3 magnets, I said. So the magnet on this chart
Down
here.
here.
We would call that the B0 magnet. Usually magnetism in like physics equations is represented as B for MRI related stuff. So it's just kind of a symptom of that, why it's called that. Not zero doesn't have anything to do with it. But anyways, this part of the magnet is always on. Whenever an MRI is installed, when it's on, this is on. And the MRI is never off. You can't just, if you turn an MRI off, it'll break. There's
Really?
a very delicate way that, service engineers will have to like ramp it down very slowly. But for the sake of this, so that magnet is always on. And that's why it's very important not to have any metal in your body. It's very important to report any metal on or inside of your body to a technologist in the screening process. These are very strong magnets. So going back to Tesla. So 1 Tesla is 10,000 Gauss. 1 Gauss is our gravity that we experience on Earth as humans walking around. So like Goku in the hyperbolic time chamber, like if you watch Dragon Ball Z, it's like that. Not that you feel that actual pressure on your body in an MRI. I'm not saying that at all, but
Sure.
Just for the equivalent, the scale.
Yeah, the equivalent amount. Yeah.
So the magnet, the magnet, the B0 magnet is always on. And say you're this patient right here and you've, moved in to the bore, because it's resonating at the frequency of hydrogen, all your hydrogen atoms, will kind of align. I should step back and say, like, kind of naturally, like, these hydrogen atoms would just be floating around. And, like I used Earth and the moon earlier, so you can imagine, like, the North Pole and the South Pole, since we're talking about magnetism, So, like, there's one hydrogen floating around here, and its North Pole is this way, and this other one's North Pole is this way. But once you get put into the MRI, they kind of align like this.
Oh, my God, that is
because
sick.
Because their spin precession, essentially, because we're resonating at that frequency, they become aligned. They don't spin anymore. Some of them will orient up. Some of them will orient down. And say if we could imagine like a volume where there's 1 million hydrogen atoms, only 3 of those will be... Or, I'm sorry, I should back up. The parallel lines and the anti-parallel oriented ones will essentially cancel each other out as far as magnetism goes. But there will be, say, 3 out of 1 million left that are not canceled out. And
Radicals.
That's how we generate our signal, is from that, essentially. Those ones that aren't canceled out, the parallel and anti-parallel, and just whatever's left is what we can generate a signal from.
And it still comes in that detail. I mean, I guess we're talking about, billions and billions and trillions, but
Right.
That's crazy that it's 3 out of 1 million.
Yeah, it's like approximate, but just a way to think of it. And yet it's still like a very abundant signal in the body, and we can get pretty good pictures of it. Yeah, so that's what that one magnet is doing. Essentially, is aligning everything into kind of like you can imagine an experiment, a procedure. Like all our hydrogen atoms are aligned. Now we can start doing stuff. But I feel like you had a question.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, what is? And I may be jumping the gun here if we're still talking about magnets, but I'm like wondering what is, like, this says scanner, but what is the scanner? Like, okay, so the magnets align the hydrogen. How do we scan that into an image? How do we turn that into an image?
Right. So that's where the radio frequency coil comes in.
Gotcha.
And we also call this the B1. Also kind of arbitrary, but just the insider terms for you. But yeah, so the radio frequency coil.
B0, B1.
B0, B1. Yep. B0 always on. That's always on. That's the way to think of it. B1, this is where like the manipulation kind of comes in. So the radio frequency coil, it can do a lot of things. But essentially what we want to do is, because we have our spins in alignment, I'm going to use my hands like this again. The radio frequency coil can tip them out, kind of knock them out of place, and then they'll just naturally sort of rest where they were. You know, you can think of it like a pendulum eventually coming down right back to its resting place. So that radio frequency coil kicks it out. And because of, the law of induction, and, some physics principles, essentially when you have a magnetic field and particles are in alignment and they get tipped out, it takes time for them to essentially come back to their resting state.
Yeah.
And there's what's called like longitudinal and transverse relaxation. It kind of gets into like kind of if it's spinning around, say, the X and Y axis, or if it's just kind of returning to the Z axis. We think of it like a 3D space, XYZ.
Sure.
There's also like rotating lab frame, which is a little more intense way of thinking about it, but I'm just throwing out like every MRI term I know while we're like brushing the subject. But yeah, so different properties of our body, kind of stepping from the micro to the macro a little bit. So say like fat and muscle, they all have hydrogen, but maybe muscle is a little more iron. It has some, they're different biological stuff.
Yeah.
Other stuff. Yeah. So because there's sort of these like chemical environments that are happening, different parts of the body, say, just using my example of tipping things out and them coming back, that's what kind of generates the different contrast we see, like what's brighter or what's darker in an image. It's kind of how quickly they come back to that natural state and when we decide to take a picture of it. So yeah, like, any of these are good. So yeah, you see the brain is gray, the cavities are black, air, not really just air, but, and then, yeah, you got the bone, the skull you can see is like very bright.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, and the neck that looks like, I'm no neck specialist, so I'm not diagnosed.
I'm not a neck guy, so.
But, yeah, you're not a neck guy, but you can see, yeah, there's essentially different stuff.
Let me see.
And so this can come in handy if
too.
Yeah, that's another good one too. So yeah, you see the black is the lungs. I would say, yeah, this is probably what's called a T1 image. So it's more focused on the longitudinal relaxation, so it doesn't catch up a lot of fluid. So that's why you see the heart kind of looks like a mess. It's probably also the heart. You can't stop it from moving. You can't hold it still for a picture. So, in an image like this, where it maybe takes them like a minute or two to get it, the heart's going to look kind of crazy because it's been moving the whole time.
Right.
But if they were concerned about the heart, there's a special scan they can do to not make it look junky. Take a picture really quick. But yeah, so kind of like a simple way to think about it is like the abundance of hydrogen in different parts of the body will make that organ brighter on this image that we're looking at. That's like it's a really simplified way of explaining it. It's not very educational, but it'll get you
no,
there.
I mean, it makes sense. It's like if there's more hydrogen there, it's going to be more resolute. You've got more information to work with than you'd say other areas of the body or other organs.
Right. And then, then it kind of gets into like some biochemistry of like, well, how do different organs, deal with this or that, or like what holds water, or, and that's where I'd say like the application of MRI kind of starts to show some light there is, what do we want to take a picture of is the way I think about it. I still think of it as just taking pictures,
Well, I mean, it effectively is. It is that. It's just with a really resolute machine.
Right.
It's definitely more than a Canon or an Nikon. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. And there's some cool stuff once you kind of figure out these sort of, I won't say basic like in a reductive way, but just the more fundamental properties of MRI and how people sort of mess with these. We can get pictures of just blood. Like there's no body parts. It's just like your full, it's actually pretty cool. If you search angiogram, ANGIO gram, they're like my favorite.
Did I spell it right? Angiogram.
Yeah, type in MRI afterwards, just to maybe get a little. Yeah, that's
shit.
Like Tool wishes they could put this on an album cover, Like, yeah.
Alex Gray's just like salivating somewhere. Like, oh,
he's like, I've been seeing this for years, right?
Yeah. That is. It looks like fucking lightning. That is sick.
It's so cool. Yeah, they can do that without like an injected contrast, but sometimes they do. I'd say more clinically they do. It's kind of more the fancy ones that don't need it, but
yeah,
boy, do they look cool. And so that's that's using, essentially they're tagging deoxygenated hemoglobin because blood is ferromagnetic to some degree. So we can actually kind of attune the sensitivity to that to get these pictures of just blood without necessarily picking up everything else.
And again, ferromagnetic would be iron. There's iron in it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Ferromagnetic,
okay.
Yes, means that it is extremely magnetic.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is friggin' sick.
While you're admiring that, I'm going to turn this light on because I realized my room's getting darker and it's going to look kind of weird by the end of the episode.
No worries.
All right. That looks normal. But yeah, so yeah, I'm like, I'm doing such a disservice. There's going to be an MRI person on here that gets mad at me for not explaining this well, and you're going to get like 3 better MRI episodes. But
well, we're not taking a test on it. We're not taking a test on it. Okay.
That's good.
And again, like the whole purpose of you coming on here, like this is obviously something dense. I don't expect myself or anyone listening to this to be a fucking doctor or MRI technician when we walk away from it. But like, this is just, I've heard MRI a million times. I had no idea what it stood for. And as you're describing what it, like, as you're describing the process, it all makes a lot more sense now, you know?
Yeah, it's funny, even kind of as you were starting, you said CAT scan. And I had a moment where I'm like, I know that's kind of a misnomer, but I don't even know what CAT scan stands for. And I'm like in medical physics, I'm in medical imaging. But you know, it's just a primitive kind of form of X-ray tomography.
Yeah, medical
T.
imaging procedure that uses X-rays and computer technology to create detailed cross-sectional images of the body.
It's like, what is the CAT? Like, there's so many abbreviations in MRI.
Acronyms,
I mean,
yeah.
inherently, yeah. But yeah, just you saying CAT scan, yeah. There are these words we hear and are thrown around, and hopefully nobody has to know if it's not their job.
Computed axial tomography. That's what a CNT.
Yeah. It only did it in
CAT.
one. Yeah, it only did it in one image orientation. So there's axial, coronal, and sagittal. I mentioned coronal and sagittal, like corona being this way and sagittal being
sagittal
like
for
this
Sagittarius.
Way.
Yeah.
Yep. And then axial would be your third dimension there. So yeah, I could only do it in the axial plane. We could only get, unless you physically turned your body, it was only capable of getting pictures in that order in physical space. Kind of wild. But
that is wild. It's like hurting my brain too, because like so many other topics on the podcast I've had dealt with like some kind of resonance, and just like simple physics of sound, and just knowing that like this very complex thing at a really basic level is using some of the fundamental physics of vibration as its like core. It's how it does this. It blows my mind that people were even able to think of, like, how did you have to learn for any of your classes or certifications, like the history, like who were the people that kind of come up with MRI and how did they discover that they can do this?
Yeah, for sure. I gave kind of an intro chapter in my dissertation. And it's funny. I'm gonna look up names because I feel like I would get
go ahead,
just
please.
Destroyed if I did not, because who cares about history sometimes? but no,
it doesn't matter that much,
Yeah, so there's a Nobel Prize given for the development of the MRI, but it was given to two people, and there's actually a third person. So there's drama.
Already, wow.
Paul Lauterbur and he was an American chemist, and British physicist Peter Mansfield. One of my good friends actually came from Peter Mansfield's lab, so he wasn't alive.
Crazy.
He wasn't alive when he worked
but the institution that is named after him. And
like I'm saying, it's crazy. You can like touch these people and they exist. It's not like Oppenheimer or something. That feels far away.
Sure.
I'm gonna mess up this last guy's name, which is why I'm looking it up. But there's a third person, Raymond Damadian, who probably did enough, if not more than anybody else, but he didn't get the Nobel Prize. So it's interesting.
Harsh.
But I like Damadian though, because this guy was fat as fuck. All right. It's important. It's important. We saw the donut, right? This MRI donut. You can't. It's made of steel. You can't make it bigger.
Fixed
smaller,
size,
so
very
it's
small.
It's a very fixed size. There are options for people who can't fit. There are open bore solutions, for example. But this guy was like making an MRI machine and just putting his own body in it and trying to scan it. But because he was at the first steps, he essentially found all these problems and but didn't know what the solution was, so essentially if you are too big for the MRI, it has a really hard time making the magnetic field homogeneous throughout that space. So he was getting crap images because he had so much chemical shift happening from the fat surrounding his body. He ended up, I think, getting one of his students to go in there after he figured out that part. But this guy, I love it. He's just throwing shit at the wall. It's I love that type of science.
Well, and how does he even how does he even? Maybe he understands some of the core principles of the physics, but then how do you go about how do you get a magnet like that? how do what's the process of like, I have this idea, but it's going to require shit that doesn't exist yet that's going to be particularly finicky?
So this is where the Beatles come in.
No way.
So, yes, it's expensive. And how do you pitch something like that when you don't even know how it works? How do you like, let me hook up to the grid and just like blow some fucking power out with this thing and fuck around until I make it work.
Millions of dollars, yeah.
Yeah. Also, I need liquid helium. We didn't even talk about that. That's a finite source. It's on Earth. It's needed to cool these superconducting magnets that are vibrating so fast. But yeah. Yeah, so I should say a lot of this comes from spectroscopy. It wasn't like we just like threw a magnet together like a sandwich.
Gotcha,
And we're like, whoa, this works, So people have been looking at resonance and different ways to, if you put a laser through a crystal and it's, whatever, something point something on the, light electromagnetic scale, you can, resonate with chemical properties that are of that same number. That's a terrible way of explaining it, but
no, that's actually pretty solid. That's a great way of describing that.
Yeah. So like MRI is a big big spectroscopy machine, and we're just able to do spectroscopy at very small pixels and over 3D space. So yeah, these people had, there had been a lot of work in that kind of in the 40s, 50s, 60s, post-World War II scientists rolling around. We've touched on that before. But yeah, so it's a lot of money to pitch this. So BMI, or wait, I think I mean EMI. Sorry. I'm thinking of BMI.
Their record label. Yeah. EMI.
Yeah. So they had a ton of money. And they had a bunch of gradient amplifiers. If you remember the third magnet I haven't talked about yet, the gradient magnet. They had a ton of those sitting around. So they actually funded some of the first work in creating an MRI machine, due in part to the success of the Beatles giving them enough funding to just do whatever the hell they wanted to do.
There's a lot of overlap here immediately with the recording industry and the history of just recorded music in general. So a lot of the equipment that ends up in studios at the beginning of recording, like recording audio being a thing that can be done, are big brands that were making military grade communications equipment. Tube amplifiers, preamps, they were used for power for radio equipment, and radio equipment in the early 1900s, that was like the coveted military technology. Big brands are Altic, which is ultimately becomes like Altic Lansing, Fairchild, EMI is worth mentioning here. They made microphones. There's a ton of brands that made, again, industrial radio equipment that they had to figure out something else to do with it. So the reason I'm saying this is because it sounds like that's probably another reason. That's a connection there with EMI, but then also a connection with this stuff had been created for communications at some point, and then they needed to figure out something else to do with it. And they're like, radar's a good example. Radar and radio waves too. Like, we discovered radio waves for communications, but now there are a million different ways we use radio waves and radio technology, radio wave technology. This sounds more in the realm of like advanced or boutique applications for those things, but it's another funny connection to like the recorded, and it's also strange that Vanderbilt, in Nashville, the epicenter of recorded, music history, has, a premier facility, the premier research stuff going on. I don't know. It's just a very funny connection.
Yeah. And actually the gradient amplifiers in MRIs work exactly the same as gradient amplifiers in a guitar amp.
Yeah.
Audio amplifiers boost the power of a signal, and drive it out of a speaker, and gradient amplifiers boost the power of a small electrical current to, make the magnetic field gradients, happen. So it's the same technology. It's just used in different contexts. It's crazy. Kind of when I came across that, I was like, oh, here I was like a musician, a guitar player, blah, blah, blah. And I just like
thinking there'd be no overlap.
Yeah, right. Finally. Yeah, there's the overlap. But yeah, I always thought that was kind of a neat thing about it. And yeah, the Beatles, just giving them more credit, because they need more credit, right?
Yeah, they definitely do. Well, again, it's just like one of those funny things where they're like, we need to figure out a way to make money off of this stuff. It's just sitting somewhere, or even helping fuel another industry. I don't know. There's so many funny overlaps.
Yeah.
The story I like to tell all the time is the microwave. Like the guy who discovered the microwave worked for Raytheon. Like we have a microwave and it's in our fridge, or it's in our kitchen next to our fridge, and it can be like General Electric or Westinghouse, or not Westinghouse, but any brand. But that started
it's a Raytheon
like
product.
Microwaves as we know it started as some kind of military application, and he figured out it could do what it did because he used to carry a chocolate bar in his pocket, and he would be working by these microwave machines, and it would melt the chocolate bar. And so he on top of advancing the research in that field, ultimately what comes from that is like a device that we can deploy in our kitchen to cook, to evaporate liquid in our food.
It's wild, right? I love it really that crazy. Like he's the only one who knows that it can heat up food, and it
was the chocolate bar, dude. That chocolate bar might have even saved his life, because if it's cooking the chocolate bar, it's certainly cooking his insides too, right? I don't know anyone who's going to go sit in a microwave, because that's not that's not a good environment for a living being,
Right. I mean, it kind of reminds me of like Madame Curie with chemistry. Is she exposed herself to a lot of radiation and died from it, but also did the most work on it and got a Nobel Prize on it as well. little more harmful, I guess, than the microwave example, but just kind of reminds me. Well, I mean,
but it
is funny. Like the first people.
That's what I mean. Like when you're doing it, when you're figuring it out, there's no way of telling what the thing is. Even the guy trying to struggle to figure out it was because he was overweight that he wasn't getting good images. Like no one was there he just figured out he could take the picture. It's like, now we have to learn how to interpret what this is.
Yeah. He discovered like chemical shift in imaging, but nobody knew what that was or why, yeah, it is interesting. The microwave guy, I imagine he's just like the first dude bringing his lunch to work, and like no one knows why. You're just like looking at him weird. They don't want to talk to him, But he's just secretly figured out this way to have a nice hot lunch every day.
Well,
meanwhile, working on some military grade equipment at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
It's almost like using a flamethrower to like make a s'more.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, that's quite literally what it is.
Yeah.
I just that one is just hilarious to me. But there is, and like maybe you can kind of speak on this as somebody who is around these machines a lot. Like, obviously, beyond its stated purpose, like there's things that can go wrong when you're using this kind of stuff. This heavy, serious current flowing through it. These crazy big magnets. I don't know what kind of magnetic field is generated from that thing and how that might, mess with like electronics or your phone. Like, can you kind of go into the details of like the safety training that you have to go through, and like some of the things that you have to be really fucking cautious about?
Yeah. So I'm involved with safety on an institutional level. So yeah, I can give you like plain speak about that. But yeah, so because it's a very strong magnet, talking about 10,000 times the Earth's gravity, it will pull objects into it that are ferromagnetic. So that's, you'll see a ferromagnetic wand, the little like magnet wands that people will put over your body. That's one part of safety before anybody gets there, just in case they didn't tell us they had a wrench in their pocket.
Right.
And typically in like a healthcare situation, people are in scrubs. But, research can be a little more lax. There's still safety protocols and screening that gets done. It's the same type of screening, research versus clinical. Just usually people don't show up in scrubs and they're not sick. There's also kind of, so most people who are in a hospital don't want to be there. And sometimes they've had stuff done to them before, which means they might have an implant. Especially the older they get, the more likely they are to have a healthcare occurrence. So, someone with a pacemaker that's battery operated, that has leads, going
metal
from
components.
Here to there. There are ways that they can still be scanned, even though they have something metal in their body. There's what's called MR safe, MR conditional, and MR unsafe. So in the case of an implanted device, companies provide a nice like chart or something where we can essentially see the parameters that we need to stick under to complete a safe scan. So I'm going to say like you can't come into an MRI with anything metal in your body, but there are medical cases where it is approved. It is very procedural. Yeah. We are very careful about it. But in general, if I was doing research and you were coming in as one of my participants, we'd ask if you had anything metal on your body. But due to some recent things that have happened, the current vernacular, the question is there anything on or inside of your body that you weren't born with? Because before it was, do you have anything metal on you? And you're like, is my phone metal?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, not everyone knows. It's fine. But this is like, is there anything on or inside of your body that you weren't born with? And you're like, okay, well, I got a cavity, or I got a retainer in, or something like that. People start to become a little more truthful about it.
Yeah, sure.
So I think this could lead into that one example.
I feel like that's where this is going perfectly. Yeah.
So this actually changed how technologists ask how they do metal screening for patients. So a woman, so I'll say this is FDA. This is on the FDA website because any MRI incidence has to be reported to the FDA. It's publicly viewable. It's for everybody's education on how to make MRI safer. And here it is. Yeah, here's the actual report. So I'll read the event description and then I'll fill in some details of maybe what I've made up versus what I've heard. But if you scroll up a little bit through the description, the patient was screened for an MRI and did not disclose that she had a butt plug inserted.
Yeesh.
So I'll stop there. So I think the story I've heard, it's almost like urban legend at this point, but it's like the butt plug that she bought was advertised as 100% silicone. But what it failed to mention was that it had a metal base around the silicone. So when they asked her, do you have anything metal in your body? She confidently said no. Because I'm just imagining like balloon silicone. Letters, like word art, like 100% silicone.
Yeah.
But so confidently, nope. I mean, why you'd wear a butt plug to get an MRI is wild. But
hey, we're not kink shaming here.
No kink shame, I guess. So it's like they're taking pictures of inside of your body, so they're going to see it.
They're going to see it.
Like, right. There's no way they're not going to see
that.
this. So, like, it's not like you just have a butt plug in and you're like going to a church service and like nobody knows. You know, like
right.
you're in the discovery zone. But anyways, so she went in for the MRI, and when the MRI was over, the tech was pulling the table out and the patient started to scream. The patient stated that she felt nauseous, was in pain, felt like she was going to pass out. An ambulance was called, and she was sent to the hospital. And the patient was checked out by the radiologist at the site before transport to ensure that she was doing okay. Since
the patient has not yet returned any of our calls to try and follow up to see how she's doing.
Whoever, like, this was typed up by someone in healthcare, like just the most
100%.
Just like the patient has not returned our phone calls. So bring up the picture because I can explain what's going on with this picture. Oh yeah, there it is. So this is a beautiful CT image. This is not an MRI image. It looks a lot like it, but if it were, that metal object would be like a giant black hole in the picture. The dipoles would just kind of screw up all the spins and everything, so we wouldn't be able to see it. But we're able to see it right now because this is a post-incident, post-traumatic CT scan. So it looks like essentially she went into the MRI, she was brought into the magnetic field. The scans happened, a lot of energy deposited, a lot of things going on. And essentially that butt plug's not going anywhere. So when they moved the table out, it didn't move. You know, she moved around it. Oh my
God.
And it seemed to have rested itself nicely below her liver. So yeah, I think I think this article has like some details about it, but yeah, I think she's, oh yeah, here's like the tweet that went viral as well about it. Apparently an attorney picked it up because she was suing the sex toy company for false advertisement.
Oh yeah, this down here. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. Well, the anal railgun it was a bit much. I'm just thinking about the base. That's the part that looks like it's the worst, right?
I mean, and again, just for my understanding, this would be the area that it would go in, right?
That's where it started, yeah.
Oh God! Damn.
So that's a case of magnetic resonance safety not being followed very well.
Yeah.
And just the type of crazy stuff that can happen. There's some, some videos you can look up that will show like a wrench tied to like a very strong stable device that also has like a like how much weight and pressure that it's pulling.
Sure.
And there'll be a wrench in front of a magnet. It'll be about 400 pounds of pressure. As in, if you can lift 400 pounds, you can pull it, right? But if you can't, it's going in. And the closer it gets, the stronger that gets.
Damn.
And if it actually touches the bore, it shoots up to like 1,500, pounds of pressure. Like, it takes like a crane to get stuff off of the magnet if it gets in there bad enough, So that's why we try to make sure there's nothing ferromagnetic that we can't control, that we're not aware of, before going into the room. There's even, sticky pads on the ground to make sure staples don't get in your shoe and get brought in there. There's even, little ferromagnetic sensors on the sides of the door, special clamps on the door itself to make sure that
the door doesn't rip off.
Oh, well, all that. Yeah. I mean, yeah, everything in the room has to be non-ferrous. But also just so that anything that's generating an electromagnetic field outside of the room doesn't interfere with the magnetism that's going on in there. So there's actually a shielding around the room, top and bottom, all the way around, even in the glass. The glass has little like wires in it that, you can see.
It would be equivalent to like a Faraday cage almost.
It is a Faraday cage. It's exactly a Faraday cage.
There you go.
Yeah. So there's another clip I wanted to put on here because I think this is like what people think MRIs can do, and it would be wild if they could, but we can make people feel a little safer. Just a bit of Hollywood magic. Although I love some representation, I will say.
I'll take all publicity's good publicity, so you'll take it,
Hey, Final Destination with MRI, that's huge. That's huge for MRI. Hopefully it doesn't scare people.
That's a win.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't scare people away.
But, look, dude, like every time I get on the interstate and I'm behind a truck carrying logs, I think of Final Destination. So, like, if any time anyone gets terrified and this takes them back to that Final Destination, I would say there's an entire generation of people that are terrified to get on planes because of Final Destination, but they still do it. So
that is true. I think about the log thing too. That really did fuck me up.
You're not going to find many people who aren't going to have that fear because of that movie. Like, so many people will just, every time I've been driving with someone behind one of those things, they'll be like, it's like Final Destination, dude. It's just like Final Destination.
And I feel like if I got pulled over by a cop for speeding around that 18-wheeler with logs on it, my first thing I'm going to say without hesitation is, dude, it's just like Final Destination. I can't be behind that. Like as if it justifies me breaking the law, but it would.
It's a perfect defense. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So we're going to play this. We got this 2-minute clip of a potentially grisly demise. So just kind of as this is happening, explain to us why it's BS.
All right.
Here we go.
So yeah, it's an MRI machine death scene. So, okay, the magnetism isn't strong enough to throw your phone out of your hands from that far away. I've actually gone into the scanning room with my phone in my pocket, and it didn't screw up my phone. But yeah, so it's like his tongue ring, his piercings are all coming out. There's a lot happening. It just showed this computer screen where it says do not exceed. That's the magnetism, the Tesla's ramping up.
Yeah, 5T.
There's no software that exists that would show you Tesla ramping, nor is that even something that is like you can do. But again, this is a 7 Tesla scanner, so I'll give him that. There's there's not even a table for the MRI in this example. And so, so I think the door to the MRI is open, so that's why everything outside. Oh no, it's closed. That's even better. So yeah, like I was mentioning, the Faraday cage, that would keep all of this from happening.
Yeah, right. I was going to say outside the room would be irrelevant.
Yeah, you can't make the magnetism more like this, nor would it affect everything around it because it's in a giant Faraday cage. And there's just so many safety procedures and caution that would keep any of that from happening. And like realistically, if it was that strong that someone's name tag was doing that, like every phone credit card would just be wiped. It'd be like a
EMP
EF
or
bomb.
something.
EMP bomb went off. Exactly. That's similar to what it's doing. So yeah, beautiful scene, but
hilarious.
So many things wrong with it. But of course, like with my group, it was shared, and we were like, oh my God, like they call them Teslas, but it's Tesla's a singular term. It's not. You don't put an S on it, so that's on the screen, and it goes up to 7T. That's not clinical. You can't just turn the magnetism up like a brightness.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say. I was like, you were saying 7Ts are that's pretty obscure shit. Why would they have that at a generic hospital? You know?
Right. And yeah, like most of the things, like if you have the door open, the scanner won't even run, just out of a safety thing. It's like, why would you?
Yeah.
You know, because it's so loud. Also, that's another thing I didn't really mention as far as safety is it's super, super, super loud. The magnets are moving, they're vibrating, they make a lot of noise. So, you know, one part of safety is that we have to give you double ear protection, headphones and earplugs to keep it below 99 decibels for your experienced loudness as a patient or as a volunteer. So yeah, like just having the door open to the MRI suite wouldn't that's not okay. That's a very not cool move. But also they wouldn't operate under those conditions as well because we have to keep the technologists safe. You know, they can't have developed tinnitus or go deaf because of the machinery they're operating around. So
yeah, sure. That seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, right. But yeah, just a hilarious amount of things wrong with that, but also just loved it at the same time.
It is super fun. Okay. And like anytime you get to see some obscure like esoteric thing that you are knowledgeable on in a mainstream movie like that has got to be fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I will say there's no clinical scanner out there that can do this, but theoretically you could stop the flow of blood if you applied enough magnetism because blood has magnetic properties.
Iron. Yeah.
So, you know, there's no clinical scanner out there that could do that, but theoretically you could stop blood and kill somebody with enough magnetism. Yeah.
You were talking about the helium cooling the magnets, liquid helium cooling the magnets.
Yes.
And it reminds me of this thing called quantum locking. Does that have anything to do with the processes here? And I'll share a screen so you can see what quantum locking is.
Yeah.
But
I'm afraid to use my browser to look up anything at this point.
Quantum locking, also known as flux pinning, is a phenomenon where a superconductor becomes locked in place within a magnetic field due to a magnetic flux lines penetrating and being trapped by the superconductor. This trapping occurs because of imperfections in the superconductor's structure, which act as pinning centers for the magnetic flux lines. And just so you can see this, there's a bunch of really good videos, but basically,
I've seen this stuff. This is super cool. Like levitating.
So that's that quantum levitation, quantum locking. That's what this is called. They super cool this thing, and then they can run it over a track of magnets in like a fixed position.
But yeah, liquid helium, finite material on Earth. A lot of MRIs now commercially are being transitioned towards helium-free ways of cooling the superconducting magnets. I don't know a lot about how that works, though, just to be fair. But in the case of the liquid helium, because it has such a high boiling point, it's a very good use for cooling superconducting magnets.
And again, that's because when you're running current through these things, it's generating heat.
Yeah, it gets really hot. It even certain scans can actually like make you feel hot.
Hot, yeah.
Yeah, there are some. We keep it in it's like less than 2 degrees Celsius temperature change is the
safe area of operation, or
so nothing crazy, but like theoretically, without the cooling of the magnets, they would just continue to get hotter and hotter and eventually probably destabilize the machine in some way. So they all work in harmony together. Yeah,
it's freaking crazy, dude. I think also too, there was a couple things I wanted to say here. So like understanding, the more I look into stuff, vibration, frequency, it kind of like underpins all of the science, especially once we get to like molecular level shit. And there's obviously the correlation to sound, and sound is one vibration that we can transduce into something, an electrical signal in our brain, And I feel like so many other aspects of like how we construct reality are kind of dependent on different things interpreting vibrations.
Oh yeah.
But there's specifically relating to the MRI stuff. It's just weird to like imagine you're like capturing a picture of the sound of the atoms. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
That's a nice way to put
like
it.
You're using like the physical properties of vibration, but you're able to take a picture with it. It's definitely one of those scenarios where it just kind of blows my mind. And on this show, you know, I talk a lot about crazy uses for electromagnetic warfare and weaponry that we've developed. And I feel like a lot of people probably think I hate these things, but I don't. I love technology. And, you know, I accept that some kind of electromagnetic radiation from being surrounded by these things is kind of unavoidable. But have there ever been any instances, like obviously you've never seen someone get a butt plug railgunned through their body with one of these things, but have there ever been I mean, you've experimented with these machines a lot, so has there ever been anything that you've been doing where like something weird happened, you're like, oh God, I need to be a little safer, or is the general safety protocol around this stuff so buttoned up that it's like flying a plane? You know, you have a checklist and you follow that checklist, and if anything deviates, you don't do it.
Yeah. I'll say there's like it's non-ionizing radiation when it comes to MRI stuff. That's another thing people kind of back in the day would get tripped up over. So they're like nuclear, but there's no ionizing radiation, so it's, you know, you get more radiation from a plane flight than you would an MRI. But yeah, the safety procedures are very buttoned down, not experimental, not hand wavy. There's one guy named Frank Shellock who kind of came in at the right time and developed a lot of like the MRI safety in the 70s, kind of as this technology was coming out, and then, you know, continued to up until this day. And I maybe got the date wrong on the 70s. I hope he doesn't watch, but maybe he'll give you an episode if he gets mad.
Sick.
But yeah, like, you know, like I said earlier, I had my phone in my pocket and I brought someone into the scanner and I put them on the table and like push the buttons on the side of the scanner. So my phone was like right there, and, you know, it was fine. It didn't get wiped, but, you know, there are cases of some people who get too close, or like their ID card will touch the side and then that mag strip gets completely wiped. Yeah, I am on like committees of Vanderbilt where we talk about like when things don't go right, and I can't really talk about that stuff, but, you know,
sure.
There are, you know, things happen between patients and people who even work there, and you know, it's pretty well documented. It's pretty easy to know kind of what happened, because it's like, who had the magnetic thing on them, you know, and then how did it get in there? You know, so there's some cases from, you know, like horrible cases you can think of from like India, where there's one I know of that happened in India where someone brought in an oxygen tank. Someone ramped up the scanner that had an oxygen tank in the room, and then it flew into the scanner, kind of like that movie. But, you know, I'd say all of it's like easily preventable, and just knowing that you're in a big magnet and to not bring anything that's magnetic in there. Like with nurses and stuff, you know, they kind of try to promote pocketless scrubs. So there's not you know, you don't throw something in your pocket and then
there's no chance that there's something accidentally there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all about reducing chance. So yeah, it's very safe. Yeah, I'd say the most common things that happen is burns, and that's from just, you know, it could be a ECG lead that's misplaced, or especially on like an anesthetized patient who's not awake. You know, they wake up and they're like, oh, this part, I got a burn on my leg, you know. those are the most common, but they're also easily preventable. And there's pictures, there's charts, there's push this button, put this number in this box type of stuff. So yeah, it's very safe and people know what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, sure. I mean, obviously. Yeah. I'm also kind of interested too. I remember at one point you said, and this was probably when you were doing more research stuff, that you were, I don't know if you had gotten to play around with them, but like MRI machines that were looking at things that were not hydrogen.
Yeah. I did some work with sodium MRI. So that was looking at, 23 Na. It's an odd number, so it has an odd number of spins. It's that kind of I don't think I used the term gyromagnetic ratio earlier, but that was the number for hydrogen, the 42.58 millihertz per Tesla, or megahertz per Tesla.
Gotcha.
That's the gyromagnetic ratio. So for sodium, it's 11.262. So it's actually, and it's less abundant in the body. So it's kind of harder to detect for that. So the pictures honestly don't look great compared to everything that we've seen. They kind of look like crap, but the application is a lot different. So when I was doing research with sodium MRI, we were using sodium specifically to look at lymphatic storage and lymphatic drainage, and sort of it was especially with lymphedema. So it appears like an obesity disorder, but it actually may not be. In some people, it's just like one of their legs may look like it's fat and the other one doesn't. And we were running some clinical trials and using sodium to look at the sodium deposit in the skin and in the muscle in these people who have this, because our lymphatic system is supposed to kind of be our waste management system in the body. If we have excess sodium, it filters it out and it puts things where it needs to go. But in the case of lymphedema, there seems to be some sort of lymphatic dysfunction going on. So, we used sodium MRI to kind of take like a better quantitative picture of those areas. So that's kind of like one nuclei and one kind of example you could use in research. But like, there's also phosphorus imaging that's used to look at like cellular metabolism. Xenon gas is used in lung imaging. You like inhale the xenon and they take an image of it. There's also fluorine as well for some lung applications. So it's uncommon, but also has been becoming more common now to use what's called multinuclear imaging methods. And I know like one of the three major companies who makes MRIs, they just in the past couple of years have named somebody like the multinuclear MRI guy, for people to go to. So it's definitely like emerging with the technology. Again, it's there's going to have to be some like AI type, software development type things to go on to get it as crisp and good as kind of the images we've looked at. But it's out there. And just kind of in that same note, I talked about Tesla and, 70s, like big fancy, but there's a big push for low field MRI, which means like using like 0.1 Tesla. And like, you don't even have to build a Faraday cage for these things. You could just wheel them around, you could put it on a plane and send it to Africa and get brain scans of people there, without having to build a multi-million-dollar machine.
Wow.
So there's a bunch of cool tech that's coming out of it. Me being on the clinical side, it's like, this is like the tried and true gold standard, but in research, it's like the questions are definitely being asked and people are trying new stuff. So yeah, the multinuclear imaging, especially low field, I think we're going to be kind of what people think of MRI maybe 50 years from now.
In the future, yeah.
Yeah.
And depending on the specific type of molecule it's looking at, what separate, is it just the size, the dimensions of the magnet? Like what differentiates a machine that can look at sodium from,
Right.
you know,
Technically,
anything
they
else?
all can, because an MRI machine is just a really expensive spectrometer. But, there's software and hardware considerations. So, traditionally they were built for just hydrogen imaging. These days, the hardware is caught up enough to where really just a software upgrade is what lets you choose a different
Wow,
nuclei,
really?
essentially. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is crazy. I mean, I guess it does make sense. Like, why build a whole new machine if we can just, if the code is easier to write than building a new MRI,
Well, it's doing the same thing too, and it's just the matching that rotational frequency of the nuclei.
frequency. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just changing how the timing, essentially, of how that magnetism is applied, and in some degrees what strength, but yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of like it's silly. It's just like a drop down click, field on the scanner at this point.
Well, again, like just going back to it's so crazy to me how many different things utilize vibration, like physics of vibration, in their operation. And especially now, like we get into the weird futuristic health practices of the future. There's like a whole wave of study going on with people using like hypersonic acoustic devices, but they're using vibrations to like obliterate cells.
Oh yeah,
I've had a guy on. What's that?
I was going to say, yeah, high focused ultrasound. Yeah.
That's like an emerging thing. I've had a guy on here a bunch. His name's Steve Ross, and he's kind of like the steward of a lot of really obscure medical equipment and alternative health treatments. And he's kind of put me on to so many people who were doing similar applications of like messing with the numbers, messing with vibrational numbers, using frequency, sound, vibration to treat certain things. Sometimes it's sound, sometimes it's light. The history and research for people looking into this stuff it goes back to like the early 1900s at least. It's just we just are now recently getting to the point where we have deployable technology and computers and code and all the things that can help manage a very delicate system like this.
You mentioned a bit about ultrasound, and yeah, we could talk about that sometimes. There's a lot of cool stuff about that. And high focused ultrasound is definitely like a new avenue where people are using acoustic waves to do stuff inside of the body. So I think in the like resonance and physics and things that like kind of all come down to these physical properties, I feel like you'd love that.
Oh no, dude, that would fit super, super well with a lot of other episodes I've done on this show for sure.
Yeah. Maybe that could be my next one, because I am also like, I do ultrasound stuff too, and probably be more spun up on it in a little bit. But there's some really cool stuff out there, especially with like harmonic frequencies and like sacred geometry. It's all in there, man.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that really trips me out about a lot of these subjects is that you start reading a lot of the esoteric texts and like reading between the lines of these things, like a lot of these principles were understood for a very long time. Like the vibrational nature of reality was understood a very fucking long time ago, and it's debatably encoded even in some ways in the Bible. Like if we look at the Bible as like just another method to pass down science coded in allegory. There's a lot of like strange stuff. I just had this guest on. I've had him on a bunch, and we've gone into a bunch of different topics. But he was telling me about this guy who had this device called I'm going to pull it up here, a multi-wave oscillator.
Oh.
And I can't remember the exact time frame here's the guy, Lakovsky.
Oh.
And he'd have like a Tesla coil thing, and you'd sit between these two electrically charged plates, and his theory was, if I can find an electromagnetic frequency that corresponds with the healthy behavior of a cell, and I can inundate somebody's body with that frequency, I could theoretically, like, basically do what the MRI does by harmonizing or resonating the molecules, but for cellular health, right? Now, interesting story. This was a serious medical thing, and there's still some that exist. The one that Steve Ross has fits in like a little briefcase, but this guy for a while was hanging out at Bellevue, and I don't know if you know anything about Bellevue, but it's a historic hospital where many medical developments have come from, and it's in New York City. It's one of the oldest hospitals in the city. And he was just like posted up there healing people until he got hit by a car on the street outside the hospital, like coming to the hospital one day.
Like a true New Yorker.
And then like a true New Yorker, exactly. And this thing kind of like fell into obscurity, but I really think it's funny how a lot of, again, this guy was doing it a long time ago. There's another guy that he talks about whose name was Royal Rife, and Royal Rife made a number of microscopes that would use just natural light and would allow you to look at insane magnifications. And at the time, electron microscopes existed, but of course, an electron microscope, you can't look at a living thing because it's getting bombarded with electrons, right?
Yeah.
So Royal Rife made this very complicated, let me see if I can pull that up too. Rife Universal Microscope.
It does kind of speak to like the parody that's involved in science, like, or maybe parody is not the right word, but like the piggybacking, the, one idea breeds another idea, and like, there's a common denominator between all these ideas, and you look back and you're like, oh yeah, someone's doing that thing. They just didn't know that it could turn into this big thing,
Dude, really, like, and even in terms of just like an industrial process, we didn't even have the ability to make an MRI until recently. It took 100 years of people experimenting and trying to find a more resolute way to image something, and industrial processes that allowed for us to build these types of things. Like this guy Rife, he's interesting because he makes this microscope. It was a number of microscopes, but he designed these things to run off just sunlight. And because of the way it was constructed, it was said that he could find the color of an organism by adjusting the frequency of light and color of the light that was being let in. And once he found that corresponding color, he was then able to reverse engineer a frequency that could theoretically destroy it. And it's not like a pleasing sound, but it's just like a mathematical thing. If you can find we were talking before about resonance, harmonic sets, right? And divine math, sacred geometry kind of stuff. What I think a lot of people don't realize is that with any type of vibration, there's a harmonic sequence. And like with any sound, there's a fundamental frequency. And from every doubling of that fundamental, you get a harmonic. It's the same thing in every other type of spectrum, including light. The math is very simple and it's universal. And it's like through all the different spectrums, the math kind of remains the same. The scale changes based on the length and energy of the wave, but the math is still the same. And if you understand one, you could theoretically figure out the math to see where that correlates. Okay, so how do I get sound to interact with it? How do I get light? How do I get microwaves? How do I get x-rays?
Right, because they're all just waves on some fundamental physical level. Light, sound, all of it.
Let me see if I can pull this up. This is some straight out of fucking audio engineering 101, but it was crazy when I started to understand this.
I was hoping. I was like,
yeah, no,
he's
this
going to
is
bring
like
up the magnetic spectrum. Yeah. It's all here.
This is it. And like the math between each of these different things that we use is all running off of some kind of wave energy, and the math that the underlying math of the measurement of these things is that's what I mean to say. But it's like it's at scale. It's as you moved into a different spectrum, the scale of it changes, but the math is fundamentally the same.
Right. And you see, where radio is on this peak, that's where MRI lies on that.
Yeah.
Talking about non-ionizing radiation, as you get further to the right, you get your X-rays, which, can't have too many, don't want to be X-rayed all the time. The techs get behind a plated thing, and gamma rays. Yeah, that's like we're ablating tissue with this nasty stuff to save your life. So yeah, sorry to cut you off, but in that this is all, and this another thing that I've been like kind of really racking my brain about too recently is back in the day, color therapy was a thing that was used, but then it kind of becomes quackery. But now in modern science, there's a lot of people that they're doing two things. They're looking at, a popular thing for people to do now is like an infrared light bath, like a red light infrared bath. And something about the structure of that wave as it enters the body or hits the skin, it helps the cells maintain healthy metabolysis and operate correctly and can again just give you some kind of like regenerative or health beneficial effect. And there's also the electronic music too. I'm sure you've come across this, where it's like this music was made in 400 hertz frequency, and it's tuned to this chakra, and like you're feeling euphoric. Not that music like that doesn't make me feel that way, but me looking at that, knowing what I know, I'm like, is it, is it that simple? It'd be fun if it was that simple, if we could just figure all these waves,
I guess the thing of what I'm saying is that like there were people, I can see where this understanding of this was baked into esoteric shit. I know about people who were experimenting with this stuff in the early 1900s, and now to see science kind of doubling back on that and kind of saying, yes, there is something to that. Now, do I think going to watch the 440 meditation audio on YouTube is that going to help you? I don't know, but I would just venture to guess that audible sound does have some kind of, there's got to be some kind of effect.
For sure.
And again, like the Royal Rife guy, he supposedly found frequencies that could obliterate things like cancer cells or tumor cells, but it's not a sound you'd want to listen to. It's like it's a sound that's based on the math of the cell. It's not made for the math of your ear, but I would say there's probably enough study, at least from like I don't know if it's physiological, but definitely like a psychological component to listening to certain types of music, certain types of harmonic sets, and inducing some kind of psychological effect, like a brain, a shift in brain activity.
Yeah, I mean, our brains evolved just for language itself. to get into those
Yeah, no,
sounds.
sure.
I mean, like, we can't hear music without it being tied to some sort of language process. I did some work on that when I was doing psychology, but even like music being in major or minor keys or ascending versus descending scales will evoke an emotional response, aside from any semantic words. So yeah, totally. And I make fun of the like 440 frequency hertz EDM music or whatever, but there's going to be a clinic for that someday, probably. Like, I don't think it's far off.
There's already I mean, sound bowls, like
right.
sound baths.
It goes back to stuff that we've seen in like ancient cultures too. Like, sound bowls. And even with the guy you showed, I'm forgetting his name, but
Royal Rife or Lakovsky.
Royal Rife. Yeah, it's like, I mean, what he's doing, his mind is where he's thinking is not different than what other researchers are doing now. I would just say he built like a bazooka because it's so big versus like a rifle, like he had a huge type of thing. But yeah, essentially we are using sounds to affect the body, especially with high focused ultrasound or ablations, or they're even using ultrasound in crazy ways they deliver medicine that's within an air bubble, like a micro air bubble, and the medicine has a really short half-life. So if we injected it, it wouldn't get to your brain when we wanted it to, or it would have, died out or whatever. But they can essentially trap these molecules in little air bubbles and sonicate your brain to where when these molecules hit there, that little air bubbles burst and you get drug delivery immediately, like right there. Not that they're putting oxygen in your blood or anything, like it's micro level, but that's kind of like a crazy future extension. Like, this guy probably had no idea that people would take it there, but essentially putting a drug in your body and then boom, some waves here, and then the drug is dispersed, and it helps you. It's wild,
dude. And again, like, the math behind it is you want to know how to destroy something with sound, you find the resonant frequency.
Yeah,
like,
the sound waves can hit each other, and just like we have waves on a pool type thing.
Well, the waves on the pool is a great example, and the other one that a lot of people seem to understand too is probably like a glass shattering, an opera singer singing the resonant frequency of that glass, and then it shatters. That's what happens, is that you find this resonant frequency of a very brittle substance, and then at that point it's just at what power rating, at what decibel level am I going to have to get that pure tone frequency to resonate that thing until the structure shatters. And again, like, that stuff, that's old. This is probably a little bit too far out on the conspiracy train, but there's like a whole camp of people who believe that one of the construction techniques for like ancient structures was resonance. And you'd maybe have 100 or 200 priests, and they'd have a resonator, a big wooden trunk, a didgeridoo, a flute kind of thing.
Thinking like a weirding machine for like doom.
Well, I mean, but it's similar in concept, and you have enough people creating a high enough energy level, decibel rating of that audible sound, and let's say you have a block that's of a specific structure. You can easily do the math to see what the resonant frequency is, or an adjacent frequency that wouldn't resonate the material but would cause it to vibrate in some way and then move. Like, a lot of people, I don't necessarily think that they were priests like levitating multi-ton stones, but certainly using vibration or vibrational methods at some point in the process is not far out there, because they understood it. They understood this shit very well, even all the way back then.
Yeah, that's some old stuff. I like that. And
I'm like, we can definitely commit a whole other episode to the ultrasound stuff, because there's even more overlap there. But it's just crazy as you're talking about what an MRI does. it's just crazy to like think. It's just wild to think that, you know, from like the smallest particle to even the analogy you gave macrocosmically of the moon going around the Earth, if we did the math, it would probably be the exact same, just at scale.
Yep.
You know, orders of magnitude more based on the size and structure of that thing. But
for sure. Yeah. And that's why I said like parody earlier. Like, yeah, you just sort of like see the same sort of thing happening on like bigger and smaller scales. Or yeah, it's like these can't be just completely not related.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And also like we're also getting to like down to the physical structure of our world that we interact with as meat machines placed on a floating rock, you know, like, yeah. So they're, you know, it's almost like a finite point kind of everything comes from, which I think is the interesting part about getting into physics is just like, you know, it exists outside of you. You don't have to, you don't have to believe the apple's going to fall. It's going to fall, you know,
right.
But people have been looking at this for a very long time, you know, probably, you know, every moment of our lives is a physical experience. And no doubt folks, you know, in the BC era had enough time to figure some shit out, you know. I have a book, it's like 17th century magic, music, and science, some heady thing like that. It was from Bombardi, I think, our class we took. But at one point, no one understood why, like, if you have a tuning fork that's tuned to A and you ring it and you put it next to a guitar and that has a string tuned to A, that string is just going to vibrate resonance on its own. Yeah. They called that magic, you know? So they didn't really know, you know, we call it physics or whatever name you give it. But people have been looking at this stuff for a long time, you know?
Well, and this is something trippy. This is something I've spent so much time thinking about. Back in the day, like the way we use magic now is not how they, like, it's not the context that they were using it. And when you look at all of the magicians of the ancient world, a lot of those people, the alchemists, right? All of those
alchemical
people,
practice, yeah.
they were just doing chemistry. They were just doing science in a time when they couldn't call it science because you'd get burned at the fucking stake.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
But they were like the early scientists when, you know, when people say magic back then, it was in my mind, the more I've thought about it, it was tantamount to somebody saying this is science in the same way that we say science now. There's also that quote that's like, any science that's reasonably advanced would appear to most uninitiated as magic.
Right.
You know, like there's so many aspects of science that if you don't understand the science, it doesn't compute. How does this happen? It's magic, but really it's not magic. It's a very simple process that can be quantified when the means and measurement ability are available.
Right.
You know, I've also had this guy, John Stuart Reed, who's an acoustic physicist, and he's known mostly for like taking these super elaborate cymatic images. Yeah. I'm sure that we've talked about this before, but I always come back to this because this is a really good way. You're visualizing harmonics right here. That's what cymatics is. It allows you, and at least the pictures that he takes, his microscope is special because it has a tray of like these. This is sand on a plate, and if you
I've
vibrate
seen stuff
that
like
plate,
this too. Yeah, when you were talking about
vibrate the plate. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, when you were talking about like ancient, like construction stuff and like using vibration to move things, I was thinking about this, like the sand being moved in certain orientations.
At a certain scale, you could imagine that if you understood what you're looking at here is sand on a plate that's being vibrated at specific frequencies, but you're not seeing the shape of the sound. What you're seeing is the shape of the medium, the plate. You're seeing the shape, the resonant patterns in the material that the sand is on. So the sand is just dancing on this thing at the resonant lines of flux depending on the frequency. But he has a special microscope that's like a tray of water that's illuminated from the top. So what you're actually seeing here is the sound. You're seeing the wave propagate through water. And I can't really, let me see if I can, it's 3 dimensions. You're looking at the ripples on top of the water, but what's happening is, if you were able to look at this from the side, this is like a cross section of what it's 3-dimensional. Sound is 3-dimensional. Vibrations move in 3 dimensions. So, I always, the correlation to stained glass windows is a thing that people bring up first of all. And, yes, they built those temples they build churches to resonate specifically with the songs they're going to be playing in them. They know the math. It's very simple. They've known it for a long time. The images in the windows are just another visualization of a concept that is very, very deeply understood and definitely ingrained in the allegory of whatever religion or esoteric text. But this is the structure of matter. I don't know if these are all like specific frequencies or if it's a harmonic set, but there's something really fascinating. Like, you'll listen to a fundamental frequency and it will have a simple shape. But then when you follow the harmonic set up and you double that, you get to another harmonic, the image like increases in its complexity. And every time you double it, it increases in complexity. And this cymatics is a really good way to visualize resonance, because as you're moving through a harmonic set, you'll see like the disorder between the harmonic, like the anchoring frequencies of a harmonic set. And every time you double it, that first image that you saw with the fundamental, you see it again, but now it's a much more like detailed.
It's like more complex.
I don't know. Yeah, it's like a more complex version of whatever that fundamental was.
Yeah. I love stuff like this.
And dude, this is it's crazy. Like, this is the future of science. It's definitely the future of medicine. It's the future of military technology, like wave energy. There's a reason that so much money and research has been put into it, because that's like the building blocks of 3-dimensional reality.
Really? Yeah.
I've gone like way down the rabbit hole of, there's this place out here, I'm sure you've heard of it, it's called Brookhaven National Labs. They've done a lot of like very advanced nuclear research. They had one of the first particle accelerators. They had a number of nuclear generators. One was even like a medical nuclear generator. Shit. But you think about all these things as like this advanced science, which it is, but it's all using a lot of the same core concepts of just the simple vibration of energy. I don't know. It trips me out every time I look into these things and I like really take a second to think about it. The more you zoom in or the further you zoom out, it's just the same stuff at a different scale. I don't know. It's weird, dude. It is
crazy. It's a little comforting too, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. And like, especially just talking about light, I think like you could view light as a wave or as energy, it's just depending on your context of it. So like, as far as like big energy companies or things like that, like, yeah, the fundamental property of everything is just a wave, essentially. I mean, like down to it. So yeah, like, it's crazy the things you could do, some evil genius of waves. But for now, we've seemed to use it mostly for advancing in medical stuff, and just the idea of being able to take a picture of the inside of the body without opening it up
That's crazy. That's magic.
Puts us way past like any other kind of realm of medical knowledge, like generation or whatever. Like that's insane. I can tell you if a tumor's in you. I don't have to open you up,
and explore. Yeah.
And surgery is just like a carefully planned car accident. It's like not knocking surgery. I mean, it's super important, but I mean, like, just to be real, like, it is a practice.
It takes a lot. Yeah.
People,
and your body...
people do surgical operations because they were taught how to do that by other people who did surgical operations. That whole thing, that's been going on for a long time, like old medical rooms where they're just operating on a guy and there's like 100 people crowded around like a tower. But with this stuff in science, there is the practice of it, but we can also step back and get into the theoretical or the weird or the, what happens if you do this? Well, types of discussions. So it's interesting, especially as it has grown and evolved and you get different people coming in with new, fresh ideas, kind of where things go. And also how close they stay to like the foundation of it all, Yeah.
Yeah, it's super trippy. Well, I definitely think the next episode that you do should be on ultrasonics.
Yeah, no, I'll talk about some trippy ultrasound stuff. And yeah, since our internet connection's good, I could get into like the funding stuff.
Oh yeah.
Or at least how that works.
Yeah, so we got cut off there with technical difficulties. So let's see if we can make that happen.
Yeah. So yeah, just like talking about research, talking about MRIs and stuff, just how like the research works on this. The research is a realm of ideas. You have to have good ideas to be successful. And, an idea is like, I want to use the MRI to look at this certain disease, this body part. There's something missing in the MRI kind of healthcare, what it can do, and here's something I can contribute to, like, do this type of scan on this type of a body or invent a whole new type of scan, like angiography, for example. But essentially, yeah, those ideas are in one person's head, and they are like a principal investigator, typically, is the kind of the title given as far as the funding agencies and everything. But yeah, say I'm a lab. I have my lab. I'm kind of like a small business owner where I have this idea. I'm going to write a grant, say, for example, the National Institute of Health, since that's kind of been coming up a lot lately. And I say, like, hey, guys, got this really great idea. I'm going to do this heart scan. It's going to save a bunch of people. There's a formal process to where I essentially am pitching my idea like Shark Tank or something, and it goes to a governing body who reviews my application and says, yeah, this is a good idea. This is worth taxpayers' money for you to develop this heart scan that helps people. Yeah. And so I say, awesome. I get to keep my job because I can pay my own salary now.
Funded, baby.
Funded. But the money doesn't come to me. I have to work at a place like, a top 15 college or something like that and then essentially the NIH will give the money to the university, and the university will disperse that money to me as it comes in ways of having employees, having students, buying lab equipment,
yeah,
things like overhead, electricity, building space, everything. It is just, imagine like opening up a pizza place, but instead of serving pizza, you're developing new MRI sequences or something like that. And the university actually gets money out of this deal. Say if I ask for $1 million, the NIH would award a university $1.5 million and that $1 million would come to me in increments, but that $0.5 million, that just goes to the university for, you know,
administrative fees.
Yeah. Things that would relate to just running stuff. But, you know, a principal investigator would have to detail what, down to the penny, what everything's going to be used for as far as graduate student salary, scan time, equipment. And yeah, the university obviously gets a big, you know, chunk of change out of it. And it's incentivized for good researchers, successful researchers, to keep bringing in grants. So they continue being funded, they can continue doing research, the institution they work at continues to benefit from it as well. And so that's kind of like the happy marriage of academics and research from an institutional standpoint. And yeah. I was about to be like, go into what's happening now, but that's just the basics.
Well, and what, you know, again, like not getting too crazy and pointing a finger, a blame, but like just kind of briefly explain what is happening now and why that is bad.
Right.
And not a good thing for advancing science.
Yeah. So, essentially, there's been a list of no-no words sent to the people who approve these grants, where if you use certain types of words like diversity, your application could be shut down entirely. Yeah, that's kind of a thing right now. On top of that, you know, a lot of people's funding are getting kind of pulled back because they say, oh, well, this isn't as important, you know, now as it was a year ago when these people at the NIH approved your application. So yeah, there's kind of this systematic, kind of from the outside looking in, especially if you're watching the news, seems like research is being gutted in a lot of places, and folks are losing their jobs, and that is for sure happening. There are some schools that have kind of gone against it, because in some cases, and it's like a currently developing thing, like, so I'll say how it is now, but, you know, something could happen tomorrow and it's just totally not true. But some cuts haven't actually happened yet. There are some schools that have not changed anything, and they'll say, we'll figure it out once we know how much, you know, how much money we have. And then there's other schools who are making the cuts ahead of time, to essentially prepare for the oncoming wave.
Yeah.
But really, it's just people, you know, who are actually in these jobs are just going into work not knowing what next week will look like. And that's, you know, any job that's not good for employees, for retention, for your own psychological well-being, just to know if, like,
well, yeah, sure,
the things you do are important,
yeah.
You know, because like yesterday they were important, but today they're not. And then, like, how do I pivot? You know, how do I get around this? You know, some people have made jokes like, oh, I'm just going to write grants scanning old fat white men, you know, and I'll get funded easy, you know. Like, there's
Hilarious.
sort of that discourse and mentality going around now, which is all reactionary, you know. Before kind of this, like, big Doge or like current administration, like whoever you want to point the finger at, you know, none of these things were really something we thought we had to worry about, because America has to be the best at everything, and we charge a fuck ton for healthcare, so we better be really good at it too, right? So, you know, from my personal opinion, I'm just curious what it looks like down the road if we're not supporting research initiatives to cure cancer, to stop dementia, to, you know, help little kids with brain tumors and heart defects, because that's what some of this stuff does fall under. It's not just social related issues or political related issues. It's like there's literally, like I said, a list of no words, and if you have any of those words in there, you're at risk of being cut, no matter what you actually are doing.
That's what I was going to bring up too, because I remember seeing a wave of stuff that did get cut because of buzzwords, but the buzzwords were used in the medical context, which is separate from like general language context. So they were showing a bunch of things that had gotten cut because they had these words, but if you actually read the title and didn't just search for all grants looking for money that include this word, they're like, it's legitimate science. It had nothing to do with whatever the context of that word was as the political buzzword that it was being singled out for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like in chemistry, cis and trans, isomers, like that's a word that they use to describe like functional groups that are substituous or, how they interact with each other. But if you just and even control diversity. F trans, you'd be like, oh my God, it says trans.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. No, I've heard of a case of someone who using the term neurodiversity, saying everyone's brains are different, but they had to change that word to make their application better suited, so it's just crazy, it's a weird time.
Well, it's just like, it's also too, I've had enough scientists on this show now to where like they've really made me understand the value of being able to read science, and not everyone can do it. And for all the people that I know who, as a course of their job, read science, all of them have had this kind of fear where you've got an idiocracy type of civilization brewing here, where people who are not scientists, who don't know how to read this shit, who do not know what any of it means, are making a judgment call. And in these cases, like stopping the funding or stopping the process of that science being done, while the people who are the scientists are like, no, we need this. You can't just cut it because it has a word in it that you don't like. It all reeks to me of Brawndo has what plants crave. Plants crave Brawndo. So
it has
what's the problem?
Right?
It has electrolytes. Yeah. That's what plants crave.
Yeah. I think that's kind of that can go into some other stuff. It's just like, how much information we have at our fingertips now. We all feel like we could be an expert in everything, and so we should be. And that's just, it's still very new.
That's not the case. Like. It's not why. And even like, just because you have AI doesn't mean you have the intelligence of AI. Doesn't mean whatever the AI is telling you is actually real. Oh, yeah. Like there's so much subtlety. We've gotten so used to the convenience that we think we can fucking cheat code knowledge and of like very dense, involved subjects that are, when you really look at it, it's a number of complex subjects that are kind of interrelated. You're not going to find an answer to understanding that by asking a simple question to AI. That's just not going to happen.
Oh, yeah. And, just like you're saying, like the multidisciplinary aspect of, especially just how we've been talking about MRI tonight, is like really where science is moving now. I think a lot of traditionally, like, even I myself, growing up in school, you're like, oh, the biologists go over there and the chemists go over there, and you have your like whatever science job, whatever, like these are separate domains and these people interact independently of each other. But, especially with what happened with psychology, kind of like in the early 2000s, is like the big push for neuroscience and like brain chemistry and, away from this part of the brain does that. But no, actually all these parts of the brain talk to each other all the time. So you can't, one part of the brain isn't experiencing something that everything else isn't. And just like with, science and all this stuff, like, it is becoming more multimodal multidisciplinary to where, yeah, it's you can't just pick it up super quick. You have to just expose yourself to a bunch of stuff over and over and over and over, and then hopefully maybe you start to be like, oh, that thing looks like this thing I saw before. Huh, I wonder what's up with that, you know? And like, that's where the critical thinking comes in. Yeah.
Well, even someone like you too, you have like a lot of hyper-focused training and skills. There's still gaps. Like you're still going to have to go to people who chose another discipline to understand some things. That's why we have experts. And that's why, you know, even getting a doctoral degree in anything takes so long, because if you want to be a specialist in it, that in itself is its own world. But there are gaps. You still have to rely on the work of other people pursuing tangentially related subjects with the same amount of fervor to become an expert. That's how you advance things. You know, I completely agree with you. We used to think these different branches of science were just completely compartmentalized from each other, but they're not. And it's becoming more and more obvious that if we understand one totally but don't understand the others, we don't understand the one that we understand totally. We have to understand how all of these systems are playing together to get any serious, legitimate idea of what we can do about it, or you know, what it is doing, you know?
Yeah, multiple perspectives, right? Like not relying on your own singular perspective too. Going back to the AI and people thinking they know everything now. but yeah, I mean, that is what it is. It is an iterative process. It is a snowball, you know, it is a game of leapfrog or piggyback. Like, and you know, there's one guy I've worked with. He's like one of the top researchers, but you know, he can like detail his educational lineage back to like Einstein or like some crazy stuff like that, or even like people before. And with MRI, it is a pretty small field. It sounds like it's big because it's healthcare, but like, you know, I've been in it for over 10 years now, and you know, I've developed a lot of friendships. You know, you see the same people, you know, one person who was interested in this a couple of years ago is now somehow the only person doing this at this place all of a sudden, just because, you know, they were there, you know, right place, right time, with the right ideas.
They're in a huge pool. Yeah, exactly. They're in a huge pool. So
yeah, really. Even in the stuff I did, I mean, I feel like I was a master of none compared to some people who were, you know, very focused. But even that helped set me apart from the people who were super focused. Because, you know, it's like, we don't want just somebody who's only studied brains and only knows stuff about brains, because that's not going to help us with the arm stuff, you know?
Right.
But yeah, it is a very limited pool, and yeah, these people know each other. So I don't know. I think, yeah, in relation to funding, though, I think maybe some places will become more or less like a beacon of intellectual thought or intellectual freedom, maybe, if we're going to go back to like a communist type, you know, post-Cold War weird way of thinking. But yeah, I think, yeah, the funding mechanisms now have just been kind of screeched to a halt, and I think everyone's like doesn't even know if the train's gonna go back into commission or not. And it may be rough for a couple of years. I'm kind of hoping that maybe other funding sources can come about to where there's not as much government influence. Those do exist. You know, there's private companies. You know, I could write a grant to like Big Milk about like bone density and osteoporosis, and people have done that, and I'm not, you know, like, that's a great study. But to put so much lenience and I don't know, a better word than faith, but just like on a few National Institute of whatever bodies to do all the funding that matters to the most important places, you know, and they're being roadblocked like this. I think uh, the greatest creative achievements come out of limitations, I think.
Yeah. Pressure makes diamonds.
Exactly.
Necessity is the mother of invention. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or, never waste a crisis is what one of my mentors told me. So, yeah, I'm kind of curious to see where it goes. My LinkedIn feed is like depressing for the past like 6 months. So it's just like open to work, you know? And I was on research and I came to the clinical side now. So I feel like I was on like, you know, the first life raft off the Titanic or something.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, my entire career and colleagues and folks are people who do research, who depend on this type of stuff to take their kids to daycare and buy Christmas presents and, you know, feel fulfilled with their life. So, yeah, it's been weird. But you know, maybe some positive change can come from it, maybe from eyes on it, or just, you know, other people understanding that this is how your grandma gets her medicine at the end of the day.
Well, I think, you know, we're seeing it with like so many different areas of privatized industry, but, you know, in the same way that the government now really leases out launching rockets to SpaceX or Blue Origin or whatever, Boeing or whatever, I don't see why it's the military industrial complex equivalent of the healthcare system, but like privatizing some of this stuff, I feel like that's probably, if this does start to like really reach a critical mass, I feel like that's probably what's going to happen, is people are just going to see an opportunity. Oh, great. All these top scientists are now out of work and we've got a ton of money. So let's see what they can create that we can then own the IP for and, you know, sell to hospitals or sell to people as medicine. So I feel like when people say capitalism works, like that's why, because when the inefficiency of the government eventually gets to like critical mass, the corporations step in because they see an opportunity to own whatever developments come out of the research that they fund. So,
definitely. Yep. And like, you know, data science as a just field on its own also, you know, in part, not entirely, but kind of came from all these people with PhDs who couldn't get funding because only 5 to 10% of PhDs go on to be grant funded principal investigators. So that means 90 to 95% of those people with PhDs are sitting around going, how do I pay rent, you know? And then you had this huge boom of data science come out. And I feel like maybe it's kind of settling at this point, but yeah, just like you're saying, like all these scientists are just going to be out of jobs and someone could easily just scoop them up. I hope there's a mechanism for that. For right now, it's tough, you know.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed because, yeah, the next couple of years are going to be pretty interesting across multiple domains. There's no telling if we're going to make it out on the other end or be obliterated no way to somehow.
Know. Yeah. Oh, my God.
But we do know this. Brondo has what plants crave. So.
Exactly.
Electrolytes. That's good for everybody. Well, dude, I think this would be probably a great spot to wrap it up. Dr. Pridmore, thank you for coming on here and kind of giving us this granular look at what you do and MRI technology as a whole. We kind of got down the more like depressing train at the very end. Are there any like words of encouragement or enthusiasm you wish to impart on people who might want to learn about these things some more?
Ooh. Well, first up, thanks for having me on. Always love being on and talking with you, James. Always love where our conversations go, and it's always fun. We could do this for like 6 hours if we were in person, you know?
We have. At this point, our running tab is at least 6 hours, but yeah.
but yeah, I think, I mean, just like any system you get involved with, learn how it works, learn how to work around it, learn how to get to where you want to go, you know? These are roadblocks. They're not permanent walls as far as like research and grant funding and stuff like that. So yeah, if you're like, I really liked this MRI stuff until you started talking about that part. I mean, like any job or anything, it's going to have its minutia. It's going to have its bad actors. It's going to have its personalities you have to deal with. And being aware of those is the first step, If you want to get into research, you're not going to be a principal investigator for a long time. So you can work with someone who's already doing research, talk to them about what they're thinking about, how they plan their future and stuff like that. And you'll learn so much just from developing that group of people around you. And, it is a community at the same time. So I would say the folks have been pretty good about taking care of each other, no matter kind of what's gone down. So that's my positive note.
Love that. Love that. Well, dude, thank you again for coming on here and telling us about all this stuff. And definitely let's go ahead and just plan on the next one being about ultrasound and stuff. That seems like the super logical next progression. But this has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Folks, thank you for listening. Like and subscribe if you made it this far. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next one.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva. That's obnoxious. Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva. Literally no one cares. For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLBpod. When will this end? Thank you for listening. Now get back to work. Move it along, buddy.